We're here with Jeffrey, and I am thrilled. I'm thrilled. It's been so long since I saw your face. I just don't know what to do about it.
I know it's well, I mean, you got to move yourself into a new place and have all sorts of good times doing that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know if I should say where I am. I'm in an undisclosed location just in the suburbs of Sweden. And every week it may just change. How have you been?
Oh, it's been pretty interesting to say the least. I had myself a sudden kidney stone this week, so
Wow.
that was a lot of fun.
Was it?
No.
Did we all go get one? Should we all try and get it?
Look, if you want to go out and get yourself a kidney stone, 5 out of 7 would recommend. Perfect 5 out of 7.
I'll say for any man, genital pain is probably worse than childbirth.
You know, I wish I could definitively confirm that one. I will say that uh this would be my fourth kidney stone that I've had, and this was
Okay.
actually just mildly uncomfortable.
Wow. Okay.
So, but I had one that I had to have surgery on that. I mean, it took me freaking down. Like I was in the office, and this was like
Hmm.
10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and I mean, it took me down. Like I was doubled over on the floor in pain.
Yeah, I get it.
So, and then I had two more after that that were pretty much like that, and then this one wasn't actually that bad. So,
After you've had the
compared to
10,
those
the
three.
7 isn't so bad, right? And
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
every man should take care of his health early. You know what I mean? Stay on that stuff.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
such men that we wait till it's a big deal and then everything is a big deal because that's what men talk about with each other, right? We never say, "Oh yeah, I went in and got it addressed early and moved on with life," right?
Well, and that's the thing. Like, growing up in rural Montana was like, look, it's 30 minutes to the nearest hospital, and
Mm,
so like, do you really need to go because you're poor, and that's a hell of an expense
yeah.
already, plus having to get there. So it's like, you really got to be sure that you need to go.
I think that's how most of America is nowadays, is just be sure you have to go because a lot of us have high deductibles, you know what I mean? Or
Hmm.
inferior insurance. So, but I think that we need to just stay on it. Just go to your general physician a couple times a year, make sure you're taking care of your dental health because, nobody thinks about the fact that your dental health affects your heart. Any infection you get in your mouth travels to your heart. So you have to be really careful about that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And on top of that, they're finding out, just how much really is there. Like dental health affects your mental health. Dental
Mm,
health affects, whether or not you have diabetes, and
yeah.
it's so interconnected. That they're figuring it. They're starting to study this stuff, and they're starting to figure out what could be some of the early signs and catch some of these other things before they become big issues.
Right.
That was one study I was working on was diabetes and mental health. What's the connection there?
Wow, I love that. That's me in a nutshell, isn't it?
Diabetes and mental health.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and so that's just one of those things where it's like, if you improve someone's mental health, does that improve their diabetes? If you improve somebody's diabetes, handling of their diabetes, does that improve their mental health?
Hmm.
It was a very interesting study, and part of me wishes I could have been able to go through the whole study as part of the team, but
Yeah.
life took me in different directions, and that's all right.
Yeah, I think there's a scattershot formula for addressing these things like mental health, nutrition, and medication. That way you're not on medication or mental health therapy too long, but your nutrition lasts forever. And I think that's positive. I know I just spent money on salad and man, I was so excited to see they had red cabbage and all of the stuff I love in my salads. So I get to just go put that together today and then I will have salad like 3 times this week. I'm
Yeah.
stoked about that, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And the whole thing about taking charge of your health is so difficult. Like,
Mm,
especially growing up poor. Like,
mhm.
you get what you get, and that's kind of one of those things where it's really, you, you would think that buying non-processed foods would be so much cheaper than buying processed foods. You would
Yeah.
think, but that's just not the case.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. And I was watching, I am really, really against prepackaged foods. And I didn't realize this. My friend, he likes those because they're easy and simple. But me, I think chopping up salad is just takes less time than cooking the processed lasagna thing. And so
Mhm.
I love that. And so I just don't, when you read what they put in it just to preserve it, it's like I don't know if I
Mhm.
want that. I don't know what that stuff does to me, but I know I'm feeling really good without it. So I
Well, and
I like
and
that.
and that's one of those things, like, like some of the frozen stuff that you look at, like, the stuff that's not cooked.
Mhm.
One of the things I check is I look to see what they suspended in, and a lot of times it's just suspended in salt water, essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's like, great, cool, awesome. There's not much to it. You know, but there's some of those things, like the way in which they keep things fresh is like,
Yeah.
oh God, what was it? My youngest, I think it was a couple years ago, because school was still in session. She had she had a lunch that she had taken with her for the last day of school, didn't end up eating it,
Yeah.
and then it sat in her backpack in her lunchbox all summer long.
Who hasn't done that as a kid? You know what I mean?
So when we finally are, like, gearing up for school,
Mm.
you know she pulls out her lunchbox from her backpack and she goes, oh no. And I'm like, what do you mean, oh no? And she goes, I had a lunch in here that I didn't eat on the last day of school. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
And I'm be damned, it didn't mold or anything. I wouldn't have tried to eat it, but it was like, holy shit, this is actually really kind of weird and disgusting.
I wonder what was in it. Was it a sandwich? Was it a
Yeah,
Twinkie?
it was just a sandwich.
Mm.
It was just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Wow, my favorite.
So it was a little surprising, to
Mm.
be honest.
Mm.
But that was one of those things. Like, I thought during the pandemic I would take up bread baking a little bit more than I did,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things, like, it takes time, and with how busy my schedule is during the work week, sometimes I just don't have the desire to do it, and that's slowly changing as
Yeah.
things get a little bit easier.
Bread
So,
isn't bread isn't a hard thing. It's just it's like doing
mhm.
the laundry. You have to do like 10 minutes of work and then let it sit for 45 minutes and then do like 5 minutes of work and then let it sit for 20 minutes and then, you're
Mhm.
done.
I mean, I love fresh homemade bread, and that's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, I need to actually, like, start doing that.
Yeah.
Because, man, I do love good homemade bread.
I like knowing what's in my bread. So I
Hmm.
love it. Like, yeah, I like that. I love making my own bread. I was on the what is that? A blind show, Cooking Without Looking, like a cousin podcast of ours.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize that it was going to be a like, what's your favorite thing to make? And I was just all over the place about dough. I was like, I love dough. Like it's so easy, three ingredients, and you can make pizza dough or bread or flatbread, or you can make anything with dough. And I love that.
Right?
Mm, mm,
No, it's it's absolutely fantastic. I love making pizza dough personally, just because
yeah.
I love pizza. Problem is, like, for me, it's just that the whole, being dairy free thing is, I have to be very, very willing to accept the consequences of having cheese on my pizza, and I don't,
Mm.
or finding, like, the vegan alternative, and I've just yet to find one that's really that great. So,
I had a mother-in-law that used to get her pizza no cheese, double sausage. and it was a
Hmm.
thin crust, and it was like the best pizza. Like I would go into her side because I knew she'd only eat a few pieces, so I would just love hers, you know?
Right. No, and but like the way that some companies do their cheese blend,
Hmm.
it's better or worse than others. Like there's a local company whose cheese blend is really fantastic, and I don't really have many issues when I have their pizza.
Right.
Some of the larger chains, some of the stuff that they use just like wrecks my guts.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just the way it is nowadays. There's more ingredients in preserving the stuff when your supply chains are longer, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like McDonald's gets their meat from Australia sometimes. That's a long way away, you know?
Well, I mean, you think when you think about how much food just goes around the globe, it's actually pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Um, you think about how much soybean gets grown in the United States and then sent off to other countries. You think about how much grain gets grown in the United States and sent off to other
right,
countries. You think about how many fruits and vegetables get sent into the country.
right.
And it's one of those things where when you have to cover that long of a distance, you have to preserve it in some way to keep
Mm-hmm.
it from over ripening or going bad. And
Right.
that's, I think, part of the equation when we look at addressing climate change is going to be all of these methods that we're using to transport fresh fruits and vegetables. How are we doing it? What are we using? Is there a more environmentally friendly way to do it? And sometimes we're going to have to prepare ourselves for you're going to have to dramatically change the system.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, like one of the best things about the clean energy programs are, you eventually will see a carbon decrease, but the biggest problem is that lithium mining is such it really is an environmental disaster.
Is it?
And oh god, lithium mining is so bad.
Mm.
And that's there's always been this trade-off of what's going to be better or worse. you know on the one side you've got wind turbines. It's great, the wind's always blowing in some places like eastern Montana where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
But on the downside, though, you do have migratory bird deaths, and it takes a little bit for them to get used to the windmills being in the paths, and eventually, those will they change their migration patterns to avoid those. But there's been some problems.
Of course.
Um, when it comes to solar, you have all these solar panels, solar collectors, and it does displace any sort of wildlife that you have those
Yeah.
collectors on.
Plus
When it
the
comes to
process is kind of toxic to generate those those solar
oh yeah, well
you
it's
know.
those solar panels themselves use petroleum. You have to
Mm-hmm.
you still have to use petroleum. The mirrors, the mirror systems, the reflective systems, you still have to mine all of those materials
Yep.
in order to create that. And then on top of that, you're storing basically salt magma underneath the earth to keep generating heat.
Mm-hmm.
So and then you got hydro, which is going to affect the spawning grounds, spawning runs, all of that other.
Sure, sure, sure.
And then you get to nuclear. You still have to mine nuclear, okay, but what else? If in the old systems, if something goes bad, it goes very bad.
Right.
And so like all of these trade-offs exist. And and basically what you've seen in the petroleum industry is that it's been like, yeah, fuck it, we're just going to go full send and then sow a bunch of seeds of dissent. If this
Mm-hmm.
sounds like how politics works, you're right on the money. It's like, okay, we're going to unite around this one cause, and then we'll get all of these other groups pissed off at each other, and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing.
Yep.
And it's effective, it really is. Whereas and that's been one of the biggest problems about like green energy is just getting people to say, all right, we're going to go full send on this. We're going to go full send with everything that we can. And it's going to be far better than the petroleum industry. I mean, you still are going to need petroleum products. That's just the nature of where we're at right now until you finally come up with solutions for petroleum products. That's been one of the biggest concerns that people on the right have had is that people on the left have just wanted to like axe petroleum like right then and there, and it's like
Right.
there's definitely been the voices that have said yes, that's exactly what we need to do, and it's like yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're going to watch
Mm.
everybody's standard of living go down because everything is going to get exponentially more expensive.
There's voices that push for that because they know they're only going to get half of what they ask for. So why ask for half of what we need? You know? And they're hoping to have another side that pulls them back a little and says, fine, but here's how we do it in a common sense way. But we've lost that second party. So
Oh,
now
absolutely.
now we're stuck with the AOCs, with the voices, the Pramila Jayapals, the progressive
Hmm.
wing of the caucus is the majority voice because the other side isn't saying much of anything. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, and uh, the other side, the other side of the left isn't saying much of anything,
Hmm.
and they're too busy trying to appease the right. Meanwhile, the right's like, yeah, we're not changing anything. So then you
Hmm.
just get all this infighting in on the left, and well, of course, nothing changes.
Right.
The problem that is going to exist is that until the left decides that we're going to say fuck it, we're going to unite and go full send,
Right.
you got that's the reason why the right wins as much as they do until they absolutely
Solidarity.
until they absolutely fuck it up, until the left absolutely fucks it up so bad that people go, you know what, fuck it, we're going to the right.
Right. There was a candidate that I saw Donald Trump was endorsing for Ohio.
Hmm.
And we, I mean, we support Jeff Seitz for he's running against Jim Jordan. No, no apologies about that. We hate Jim Jordan, so we love Jeff Seitz. And I've talked to him in tweets about, just disability advocacy and stuff, and he's all in favor of that. So I really like Jeff. But there was another candidate, and I don't want to get into that, but for another district. And I was reading because I was like, how am I going to get this guy? How am I going to tweet him and say he's fucked up, right? So I'm going to his page, and what his message is true. And it's about inflation overwhelming us, and that Republicans had a better policy agenda for keeping the economy going. And look at gas prices and all of these true statements that, I mean, there's factors involved that in those dynamics, but the truth is right here right now their message going forward at the local level, it fits, and
Yep.
it there's teeth to it. And yeah, the
Hmm.
Democrats are going too far and spending too much and trying to help everybody that they can before they lose power, and all that kind of stuff. And it's right. And I don't think Democrats are they're not tackling those messages. They're going, oh, well, inflation isn't a real thing. Yeah, it's a real thing and it's affecting people. Some people, not all people, but the vulnerable people.
Right.
And you know,
And that's and unfortunately, like it, like we've talked about before, had the last 2 years of Trump's presidency looked like the first 2 years of Trump's presidency, I I don't think the Democrats would have won that election.
it
I
was
really
close,
don't.
as close as it was, and he just fucked everything up possible. You know what I mean?
Right. Like the first 2 years, you had the economy going gangbusters. You had
Hmm.
companies raising their wages. You had the lowest unemployment in history.
Yeah,
Like literally had the party like taken his phone away from him and said, "Get the fuck off Twitter."
yeah,
Like and just kept going with the first 2 years, you
yeah,
would have probably seen Trump win the second election. But the trade war with China started costing real money.
yeah.
And
And
then,
lives and farmers' lives.
yep, yep. And then COVID hit, costing even more. Like
Yeah,
he didn't win the popular election the first time.
right.
So when he completely botches the last 2 years of his presidency, like it's no surprise to me that he lost even harder.
Yeah. And it
Like
was just,
that's
he ended up covering everything up instead of adjusting his policies to fit the needs. You know what I mean? It was like he went too far with immigration. But the thought might have been correct. It's just that he went too far with it, and the exposure that he got was just overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Right. And so it's one of those things where it's like, he probably could have done so many things so different, and probably the Republicans would have stayed in power.
Yeah,
Like it really, as much as I hate to say it, like that economy in the first 2 years of his presidency is what got unemployment down to its lowest levels. But the
it
trade
helped keep
war,
it. It helped keep it down. It was trending down, and
it
he
was
helped
trending
it.
down, but
He
it
didn't.
accelerated. That's the
Yeah,
thing, is that is it yes, it was trending down, but his policies accelerated that
yeah,
downward trend.
yeah.
It's just that then he decided that a trade war was necessary, and as we've talked about, there were some things that legitimately needed to be addressed, like forced transfer of technologies to the Chinese
Totally,
government.
totally.
Like
Yeah,
that's a problem.
and
But
everything should be looked
everything
at.
else, everything should be looked at. But everything else was pretty bad in terms of, it's like, we're not gonna, we're gonna raise tariffs on Chinese steel. You know what?
Hmm.
Fuck Mexico. Fuck Canada. Fuck the European Union. And it was like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, right. And it
And
was
and
just fly by night decisions. It wasn't like create a policy to prove me right. You know,
right.
it was just, no, I'm right. I don't listen to other people. And that was the problem, you know?
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like the legitimate complaints that existed, were the forced technology transfers,
Yeah,
in dealing with the Chinese government, and then somewhat too, like, the what the European Union was doing in terms of, Airbus's subsidies versus what
mm,
was happening with Boeing. But it was kind of one of those ones where it was like, yeah, both sides knew what was happening, and if both sides would have just been like, you know what, fuck it, we're just going to leave it alone,
right.
it would have been fine. But then everybody started, pissing on each other, and that's how we ended up there. And
Hmm.
it started costing jobs.
Yeah,
Job growth slowed. Unemployment didn't accelerate anymore. It was staying pretty level.
yeah,
But but then, like you said, the trade war really started digging in and really started hurting people.
yeah,
And before you even had a chance to, start to make progress on that, then COVID hits. And that was
right.
and then that was totally botched.
Yeah,
So, like if you're looking for a 101 on how to lose a presidency, this is
yeah.
your answer. Like,
Well,
don't get me wrong, I don't think Joe Biden's presidency is going to stick around either, with the right things are going. I
right.
think I think it looks better, but the problem there is that he still has a lot to overcome in terms of job growth, in terms of that kind of explosive growth that you saw. Inflation is definitely going to be an issue.
It
And
is.
then
Yeah.
and then, and the problem that you're seeing is that everybody's being like, oh well, the government says it's going to be short term. Is it though? That's the thing, is that so far all of these things that were supposedly going to be short term became long term problems
Yeah,
because we poo-pooed.
exactly. What is short term to the government when I can't pay my rent? You know what I
Is
mean?
it is it is short term 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 years?
Right,
You know,
exactly. And
that's that's
and
that's getting.
when is it the government just ends up affecting your life long term in a negative way so that you can't live a life of happiness? You can't pursue happiness, you know what I mean? So Donald Trump gave up in like July. After 4th of July, he
Hmm.
was getting hit so hard, he didn't even want to be president anymore. There was months where he just gave up and you didn't even see him. And the other thing I thought, I swore after the first 2 years Donald Trump was going to pivot to more of a progressive, moderate Democrat. And I think he would have ruled the land had he just said, haha, Republicans, now I'm working with the Democrats because they're in the majority. Screw you. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah.
kiss their ass. And the other thing is, I learned a lesson in life at work, and it was if you're going to call somebody out, do it in private, not in public. And you're
Mm-hmm.
never going to get cooperation from people if you berate them publicly for the world to see. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there was just way too much Donald Trump personality. If we had known JFK personally, like tweeting like Donald Trump, we wouldn't have liked him either. He was a
Nope.
pig. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's why, like, right now, when you look at the infrastructure bill that they're trying to do, like the first round of talks between Biden and Caputo failed.
Hmm.
You know, and you have these voices screaming, "Oh, the left, oh, the right," and it's like, like this screaming at each other for Twitter points is getting really fucking dumb. It's
Agreed.
like it's like, you know what? The left has what they want to do on the infrastructure side. The right has what they want to do. They both agree that infrastructure needs to be done. Period,
Hmm.
end of story. It's just that when it comes to scope, this is where, I can appreciate what the conservatives are trying to do, but I would probably disagree with them. Like, for example, one of the things that they strongly disagree on is, electrical infrastructure for, electric cars. Well, here's the thing is that you've supported oil infrastructure for gas powered cars, right?
Hmm.
So with consumer demand changing for electric vehicles and the rise in consumers buying electric vehicles, if you don't include electrical as part of that infrastructure plan, you're going to have problems because guess what? The Democrats are either going to use budget reconciliation to do it, or you're going to see car companies go out and do this on themselves, which, hey, great, that's fantastic. The libertarian in me is very thrilled about that.
Sure.
But on the same time, but at the same time too, it's an added cost that is going to make the transition to electric a little bit more. Well, basically, I will look at it as, all of the different plugs for all of the different cell phones. Have you ever asked yourself why we don't just have one plug for charging cell phones?
No, never.
It's because unless you standardize something, everybody creates their own version of what they're going to do. That's why
Sure.
you have USB, USB-A, which is the mini, USB-B, USB-C now. You have lightning cables, you have the old 30-pin cables. It's like every single group decides to do their own thing.
Hmm.
But when you think about it, when you look at infrastructure in terms of how do you keep America moving in the gas market, gas has one particular nozzle, diesel has another.
Yep.
And if you don't standardize that now, or if the companies don't agree to standardize it in the beginning, and the US government doesn't, look at investing on that infrastructure, ultimately what you do is create a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just to prevent stupidity. A diesel, you don't want to put diesel in your car, you know? So there's a difference there.
Yeah, you don't want to put diesel in your car. You definitely don't want to put gas in a diesel.
Right. But here's the
But
problem. It
but
it does it doesn't matter if Democrats want to spend 2 trillion and Republicans want to spend 6 billion. If you're putting that into a leaky machine, what comes out is an inferior product. So most of the waste in a money machine is going to be
mhm.
money, and what comes out on the other end will equal less than what you put in, and that's the problem. It doesn't really matter what we spend, it's what we're spending it, the way we're spending it is the issue, you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree with you one bit. It's just that this is your chance to actually standardize what you want this to look like.
Yeah.
So that way, in the end, your constituents aren't going to be coming to you pissed off saying, "Hey, why in the hell am I having to charge this way for one vehicle and this way for another? Why in the hell is
Right.
it that, I don't, we don't have charging stations every X miles? Why is it that? Why is it that? Why is it that?"
Hmm.
So this is one of those things where understanding where things are going
Hmm.
and either being part of the process, or even if the answer is just to punt it, hey, great. But the fact of the matter is that they don't even want to have those talks. And really, when you look at electrical infrastructure, the infrastructure needs to be upgraded anyways. So how do you upgrade it in such a way that this new consumer demand is going to be met?
Curious. I just had this thought, right? So if we're gonna if we're going to build these electric gas stations, right?
Hmm.
What if the government invested in a company or two or three that was doing that specifically, and then We invested in those companies and then we drew a dividend from their success. Instead of putting an electric tax or a gas tax, we just took the dividends from the company's success. Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be a model for how to do it?
No, it's a model for corruption. If you
Mm,
think for 1 second that that we're ever going to see a dime of that money, that's never going to happen.
you don't think
Because
so?
oh hell no, are you kidding? The bet at best, what we will see is you will see companies that are producing additional electricity and possibly see our electricity costs go down at best.
Ooh, okay.
But most likely it's just going to be another corruption funnel in which companies are going to be funneling money to politicians, and politicians are going to pay some lip service and do jack shit.
That's why we need HR1 or S1.
So what I would, basically what I would say is that you need to encourage oil companies to become big energy companies. You got a Shell station on every fucking corner as it is right now. So
Yeah.
if you don't encourage them, lightly to say the least, to invest in this infrastructure, they're going to be one of the few oil companies left when you've got electric vehicles running around all over the place.
Mm,
Royal Dutch Shell, on the other hand, is probably one of the first companies that has arguably started buying and investing in renewable energy sources.
mm,
Whether or not that's going to come to fruition is another story. But your biggest issues are going to be, constant flow of electricity. So does Shell have its own wind turbines, its own hydro, its own, geothermal? What does it have?
mm.
And so what is Shell going to do to put power onto the grid so that way we're consuming that? And we're consuming that, number one, in our households, but number two, we're also consuming that in our vehicles. So the sooner that those companies figure that out, the better. And I would say Biden is perfectly poised to be able to say, look, you know, after all of our tax leak information, which should surprise fucking no one.
Mm.
Um, Basically, Biden's in the position where he could say, look, you want a tax break, you have to show that you're investing in developing renewable energy and resources. Otherwise, your corporate tax rate is 15%, period, end of story.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to happen if you want companies to transition themselves. I
Mm.
guarantee you they will throw endless amounts of money at not paying taxes.
Of course. There's something interesting happened a couple weeks ago, and I have the fuzziest head, and I can't remember what happened. But Amsterdam sued an oil and gas company
Hmm.
for something at the same time as the investors of two others issued other things. And I cannot remember, but I know it's relevant to this conversation.
Yes. So I want to say, I forget which company it was. I want to say it was
I think it's
Exxon.
Exxon.
Basically lost in Amsterdam about whether or not they were causing environmental damages.
Okay.
At the same time, was it also Exxon or was it Royal Dutch Shell, where their board ended up getting like one or two people on that are
Right.
very much in climate activist level people, which great. That's one of the things that these companies need is,
Mm-hmm.
look, you're either going to be part of the solution or you're going to be phased out when you're the problem.
Right.
It's this should not surprise anybody at this point. So you either got to get on the bandwagon and start figuring out how you're going to produce renewable energy, or you're going to just watch things decline
Yeah.
and you're going to be the last horse and buggy salesman. Realistically, you've got FedEx that's already piloting electric vehicles, electric trucks for themselves. I think that in terms of like their city driving, that's a brilliant idea. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to be fantastic. I still think that from, distribution to distribution, you're going to see heavy fossil fuels until you get more reliable long distance batteries.
Of course.
But even then, within the city, that's still a lot of driving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's still a lot of gallons of fuel that aren't going to be burnt and used. And they're committed to having their I believe their fleet be electric in 2040, if I remember correctly.
Right. And that's what we got to keep remembering when Democrats say, we want this now. They're saying, we want this to start now so that it
Well,
can end
there's
sooner. It's not
yeah,
like they're saying, stop farting cows today. They're saying, let's stop farting cows by the year 2050, you know?
yeah, and then but the problem there too is that it's like you get set on one solution,
Hmm.
and anything else is unacceptable. So they're like, stop
Right.
farting cows now. Okay, well, how do you do that? Stop eating meat. Well, what about using all of the science that we know that could help them reduce the amount of gas input,
Right.
output, so that way, people's diets aren't going to have to drastically change, or that, the cost of raising beef isn't going to drastically change because there's still
Mm,
going to be a high demand for it. And you see a bunch of them going, no, not at all. And it's like, okay, well, you sit there and scream, follow the science. So when the science gets done and you don't like it, I'm going to say the same thing to you that I said to the other guys.
yeah.
It's like, look, you can make incremental changes, and there are going to be some that are incremental that seem radical. There are going to be some that seem radical, but they're only incremental.
Where,
And
where, oh,
yeah, and so really it's just by understanding what are you feeding your animals to create such an output,
right.
by understanding the diet and how that it's like me, if I have anything with a bunch of milk in it, my gas output's going to be pretty damn high. But if I remove
Exactly.
that output, or for other people, if you actually put, if they take lactase or whatever, it doesn't work for
Hmm.
me, then you don't have that issue. The same thing goes for cows. You can either find an input or remove an input that's going to change that. The
Yeah.
question is can you do it in such a way that it's cost effective? The answer hopefully will be yes.
Putting something less into your animals? Sure. And what about the collection of the methane? You know what I mean? Just to use it for other things.
Unfortunately, I guess the best way to put it is it's like trying to collect a fart.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But if they're all in one room with a big fan, you can collect it. You know what I mean?
But you can't
Maybe
have
I
them
don't
all.
know. I'm
You can't
not.
have them all in one room because at this point you have people that are like, if they're not free range, it's cruelty. So watch. So I can immediately start picking apart this
I
argument. Like,
see it. I love it.
and that's just it. Is that unless you make a decision to go with something
Hmm.
and go full send with it, you know all you're going to see happen is you're going to see people be like, well, yeah, I get that you want to, well, we could start just collecting the farts and then use that so that way you can, okay, well, then you're still burning farts and that's still not necessarily solving the problem.
Hmm.
Or you can actually, it's that root cause of what is causing cows to produce so much methane.
Right. I like
Figure
that.
that out, solve for that problem. And that's one of the things is like, we're so interested in treating the symptom
Hmm. Yes.
that we forget to look at what the root cause of the problem is. The root cause of
Right.
the problem is, what are they consuming that is causing gas?
I always see it as a fire in the spark. Every time a spark lands in America, we're like, oh my God, a spark. But then we forget that there's a giant fire over there. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. So it's really kind of interesting and frustrating. Like, you watch this happen time and time and time again, where everybody wants to
Hmm.
put a band-aid over the symptom. And it's like we've talked about, you've got one side, like for example the whole issue at the southern border.
Hmm.
You got one side saying we just need to let everybody in. Borders are an antiquated idea. Don't necessarily disagree, but it still doesn't solve the problem of people coming here. If you're looking at what does homelessness, joblessness, unemployment, all of that other fun stuff look like,
Sure.
what's the root cause of migration for anybody?
Desperation.
Exactly. So the question is can you fix that? And fundamentally, this is where the right gets completely off basis. They think that they think that these people are gonna come over and take over. It's like one of the fucking Trump morons today. Everybody at the southern border, arm yourself and get guns. I'm like, oh yes, that's totally going to fix the problem. So when you kill a bunch of people and then you end up on trial for murder, what do you think is going to happen? Or It's like, why are people leaving these places? Number one,
Exactly.
it's not that they, there are people who do look to come here because you have a lot of new opportunities that you don't at home.
Hmm.
But you also have people who come here out of desperation and they want to go back home.
They do.
So the question is how do you look at this, and how do you solve for this? Personally, if you're any type of an American, the idea that somebody wants to be us should be a cause for celebration. I mean, not necessarily in recent years,
Yes.
but because we've got some problems that we've got to work out.
Sure, sure.
But in terms of how do you help people that want to go home get home? This is where investing in our neighbors becomes important. Investing in
True.
local economies becomes important. As you see all of these issues with China cutting us off come to
Hmm.
play, it's like this is your chance where there are places in the world where it's like you could set up similar style factories, have them be a lot closer,
Sure.
and invest in places that will consistently crime goes down when you have constant good paying work.
Yep.
There's been several documentaries on people who have worked for the cartels, and then some new factory or manufacturing or
Yeah.
production plant comes in of some sort, and yeah, it doesn't pay as much as the cartels do, but you don't
Hmm.
wonder if you're going to get shot in the middle of the night,
Right.
because you pissed off a cartel member, b, you crossed the border and you pissed off somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah.
or c, any number of things like. So
I
by
think
investing
I
by
think there
investing in our neighbors, it's going to be better for everybody in the long run, for people who want to come here to be a
mhm.
part of our economy. And that's the thing, is like the idea that they're a mop on our economy is just absolutely fucking insane. It's not true.
I think that what's cool about America is we've taken the best of the best and we've given them the free education and tools so that they can go back to where they came from and create a little bit of America there. I think the problem is that it's so hard to get in and it's so hard to leave. You have to renounce your citizenship when you come here to your other country. And I really think dual citizenship should be an option. I think I should be able to apply to be a citizen all over the world, and I should be able to do that. And in that way, they can come here or go there. They can have their
Mm.
education. It's just we keep them trapped here once we get them. But we
Unless
want
unless we
somebody to
don't
go
want
back.
them, unless we don't want them,
Right.
then
But
it's
that's what
then
I'm
it's like,
saying.
or like the case out of, I want to say it was Tacoma, where a guy was naturalized and he was held for a week and they wouldn't even look at his naturalization paperwork. Dude is a
Right.
U.S. citizen. They
Right.
didn't want to hear it.
No, they didn't. But that's the thing is we're treating them like statistics, like a mob, like a group, like a
Hmm.
number instead of a resource that's available to us. And that's why education, free education is so important because if everybody gets a chance to say, this is what I'm interested in, you're going to have agriculturists, you're going to have scientists, you're going to have laborers. A lot of people just want to work and go home and raise their family, but there's
Yep.
other people that come here to become a better doctor. And then
Hmm.
they want to go around the world being a better doctor to better people. And we
Hmm.
can't stifle that. And the problem is we think the people coming here from El Salvador and Mexico and Brazil are inferior intellectually. And so
Right.
we don't give them the chance to have that education to go back to just the shortened supply chain and bring America there. And
Well,
that's
and
that's
and a
why I
lot of the
don't like the
times.
border is because it keeps everybody trapped here. And everybody that could be in their homeland doing what they're doing is stuck here because this is where the resources and jobs and money are.
Well, and the other issue too is that it's this weird, oh, they're taking all of our jobs, and it's the jobs the jobs that you can't get Americans to fill.
Right.
But it's also, simultaneously they're taking our jobs and they're a drain on our economy at the same time. And it's like, what
Mhm.
what planet is this?
Yeah, they're
I
taking
don't
all
get
of
this.
they're taking all of our resources. They're on our insurance, they're on our Medicare, and it's really crazy to me that there's that duality in that. And I think everybody, we're a consumer-based economy. We need people buying cheap stuff. It's just America needs to make that stuff as opposed to getting it from China. We should be
Mm.
getting it from Mexico. We should be getting it from yeah,
El
Guam,
Salvador,
El
Guatemala,
Salvador, the
Honduras, it's
yeah,
but that's the thing is that we have the chance to invest in our neighbors and
yes.
bring supply chains closer to home. There are some things that we legitimately need to actually consider just manufacturing here and
Mm-hmm.
try to supplement from other places as well, but we need them made here.
Yes.
Just because if you're, one of the things is, unless every country decides that, hey, we're all going to be friendly with each other and work
Yeah.
for the betterment of humanity, there are just going to be some things that you have to do internally.
You know what's funny? Toilet paper is one of those things. It costs way more to ship that bulky light item than it does to make it here. And that's why it's made in America. All of
Hmm.
your toilet papers from Charmin to Northern are made in America. It's just Northern is made by the Koch brothers or a subsidiary of them, and Charmin is made by Kimberly Clark, which is more nonpartisan. So I like Charmin.
Yeah, so it's all one of those things. Like
Yeah.
there are going to be some things that we absolutely have to look at making here. There are some things that we need to really just boost our trade, boost our capabilities with our neighbors.
Yes.
It's going to end up better for all of us in the long run. And on top of that, it's like, as you look at this whole model that the G7 is currently meeting about, how do you offer a democratic solution to places like Russia and China? Unless you start building some friendships and start investing in those friendships,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to have the same ability to keep up with China just because they're willing to do it at all costs, human life included.
It's interesting about Russia specifically. Russia's constitution is very similar to ours. The difference is a person of the people will be in charge. And
Hmm.
I've never, oh man, I don't want to get hacked and attacked, but I don't think Vladimir Putin with his like $10 billion house is really a man of the labor, you know? And so I think that's the issue. I think Russia just has one man that doesn't see the Constitution the way that the Constitution was written. I'm happy with, I mean, there was a place called Sunny, and we've talked about this in Bulgaria or something,
Hmm.
and Sunny was going to be the the Russian version of Utopia, and it was destroyed by something completely different called a nuclear explosion,
Right.
disaster.
Right. And so you have this
It's
is
just
always
been mutated. Like
this is
Donald
always
Trump
one of
tried
those.
to mutate us. I think Vladimir Putin mutated Russia. But I don't
But
think
here's
it's
the
Russia or the plan or the system. It's just the man.
this is where I think a little bit of history goes a long ways in
Yeah,
this.
let's do it.
Because at least when you had the Soviet Union, the Soviet Union may not have had the same sort of power as the United States did towards the end,
Right,
but it still had a very prominent place on the world stage. After it collapsed, Russia really didn't
right.
for 10 years. Putin has brought that back. And
Agreed.
for better or worse, uh, what Putin has done to bring Russia back to a more central stage has worked, and arguably the people are definitely, I wouldn't say, like, to put it lightly, it's not like Belarus where it's completely corrupt. I would
Wow.
say that I would say that to say that Putin isn't winning Russia is definitely an understate. Is definitely not true. But I don't think it's as much as it looks in the elections. But
Agreed.
that said, though, what Putin has done, I would say, is I would put it more equivalent to what FDR did during the 30s and 40s. to be quite honest. Just more on an autocratic scale rather than on a democratic scale.
Interesting.
What Putin has managed to do for Russia has everyday Russians absolutely enamored with him.
Really?
Yes.
Why? What has he done?
Well, you basically at the end of the Soviet Union, you had crap living standards for everybody. After
Mm-hmm.
the fall of the Soviet Union, that got worse. Putin
Mm-hmm.
has been
Yeah,
able to stabilize Russia's economy, not as much as he would like, because Russia's economy is still very much an oil-based economy, but it's far more stable than it ever was in the last 40 years.
okay.
And so that stability that he has brought to the Russians has made him very popular. It's just that he also has some very ex-KGB tendencies to go with it.
Interesting.
So so you have to look at it. I would look at Putin almost like as a lens of FDR. Not quite the same, but very similar. After all of the crap that went through the Great Depression, FDR brought stability. That stability then in turn brought the country back. And then through harsh times, he was an effective leader. It's just that FDR happened to be very much in the Democratic lane.
Sure,
And so the
sure.
only difference there is that you know Putin is making himself, he is helping himself be right, and through his successes leveraging those to create the lanes that keep him in power.
Agreed. Agreed.
Because when you look at everyday people, if you were to say, hey, you can only elect Putin twice, what you see is this lack of stability
Mm.
that the Russian people have had to deal with,
All
and
right.
that is not appealing. That's essentially what happened in terms of getting FDR reelected three other times.
Mm.
FDR brought stability. That stability became long term, and the fear of if we lose this person, does that stability go away, is very real for people who hadn't had stability for 40 years.
So somebody in a 10-year abusive relationships likes this stability, like knowing what's coming.
That's closest to the way that I could put it. There's
Okay.
this the devil right?
Right. Because I don't think, I mean, from an outside lens, I think Putin is alienating his country. He's creating more sanctions and less opportunities to grow its economy. And I think
Hmm.
when what they say, what his philosophy is when there's trouble internally, um, show external forces, external victories. So
Hmm.
he's saying we're in a war in Syria with America. We're in a war in Ukraine with Ukraine and America, and we're winning. And I think those are fabrications. I think he's
Hmm.
shrinking. He's
Like I
shrinking his
said, it's in
economy. You know what I mean?
it's an autocratic lane.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that Russia has a lot of land space, Russia has a lot of oil, and despite all of those
Yeah.
sanctions that we have put on individuals and some
Mhm.
companies,
Yeah.
Europe is still so heavily dependent on Russia that he doesn't have much to worry about unless Europe just massively invests in some other system that's going to reduce their reliance on Russia,
Like green technologies.
like green
I mean,
technologies.
like what's coming down the pipeline next. So I
Like
just I don't
if
see
you
Russia as a long-term sustainable thing right now. Their
that's because it's
plan
not.
isn't going forward, isn't sustainable.
That's because it's not.
Right.
But that's what short-sighted about humanity is that it's stable today, so it's going to be
Yeah.
stable tomorrow, and we'll worry about everything else later.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so like this whole issue of rocking the boat and trying to get rid of Putin is a problem for everyday Russians who, think about it. If you were guaranteed your next meal after not knowing if you were going to eat for 10 years,
Sure.
how likely are you to say, you know what, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this person anymore who's guaranteed my next meal.
Right. I was with a abusive drug addict for 12 years. The devil I knew was better than going out on my own. So I totally get that. And I also
Hmm.
think your average Russian doesn't have the news collecting capabilities that your average American has. So I don't think they know that
No.
there's an option or a difference or a way of. I mean, the United States has its flaws. So does every system. You know what I mean? So does the communist system.
Oh,
It's
it's
and
all
so
got its flaws. It's just the
right.
question of whether or not you're actually getting to see those flaws. And
Yeah.
Russia's media is state controlled. Once again, this is why, they've gone for a very autocratic system, and that's a problem.
Right.
You know, and because your autocracy is based around the fact that whoever succeeds Putin is going to be as good as Putin, if not better.
Right.
Look at Venezuela. Venezuela under Hugo Chavez, it worked. It was working.
Hmm.
Maybe not the best, but it worked. And then you get Maduro to follow it up, and it's a shit show
Right.
because Maduro just couldn't hack it the way that Chavez could.
That's
And
an
so,
interesting point. Wait a minute. That's an interesting point. Thank you for listening to Public Access America. We will be back Thursday to continue this discussion. We'll be back next Thursday to continue this discussion, or you can listen to the live stream every Sunday and figure it out. All right, autocracy and why it's expanding around the world. Let's go on with that.
yeah, so autocracy, the whole one of the short-sighted pictures, like I just said, is that you're relying on the fact that whoever is next is going to be able to run it as well as the last guy did.
Right.
And so that's one of the biggest failures of autocracy. And of course, that's what autocrats see as one of the biggest failures of democracy is that,
Yep.
you have this, instability every X years because you're not certain if the next person's going to hack it.
Right.
But here's the thing is that our society is used to the fact that every 4 years there's going to be some turnover, there's going to be some
Hmm.
change, and we're used to weathering that.
Yeah.
Whereas if Putin died tomorrow, if Putin doesn't have a successor that is as capable as Putin is,
Right.
Russia's going to find themselves in a really fucking bad spot. Or
Yeah.
they have somebody who's completely different from Putin who happens to be either great or terrible and then, branch that way.
Right, like Navalny, who by the way is right of Trump on almost every issue.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So
but
so there's
here's the thing about autocracy, the pro thing about autocracy that they are saying, that autocrats are saying about democracy. You can't get shit done when you have these forms of government where it takes so much red tape to accomplish anything. I am one man, and what I say happens, happens. And I have the voice of the people. And if they want it, I should just be able to do it. And that cuts out a lot of red tape. And a lot of people like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I get why people like that. I get why people like the ability to just say, you know what, fuck it, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. I mean,
Hmm.
I like that. Sometimes you have to make a decision, but the problem is that is the person who's making the decision actually good at making the decision?
Exactly.
Sometimes, and this is where, sometimes you have the best people around you who are giving you the best information available.
Yes.
And so based on that information, you go, okay, this is what we're doing, and I'm going to say, and that's what I'm going to say.
Hmm.
But then you get people like arguably Trump who don't listen to fucking anything.
Victor Orban, right? Like these
Yeah.
weird,
And
yeah,
then they're like, this is what we're going to do, and it's not based on anything in particular. It's not based on
right.
policy, it's not based on actual information.
It's
Fuck,
the last
it's not
person they
even
talk
based on
to.
reality sometimes.
It's the last person they talk to with the most money.
Exactly. And so that might work out for the person who had the money that, they passed off on,
Right.
but it didn't work for fucking anybody else.
Right. Because the more power you have in leadership, the less response you have to the people that are giving you that power. You isolate yourself so you no longer understand what the people want.
Hmm.
It's self-isolating, and by definition, it just can't work because you will know less of what the people want the less you deal with people.
Right. So this whole issue of whether or not, what does Russia look like after Putin?
Mm-hmm.
If Russia's not thinking about that now, they need to be thinking about that,
Yeah, agreed.
because the people who keep voting in Putin, you know, whether or not he's making it legitimately or not, I think he's legitimately gonna keep winning elections
You
in
think?
terms of actual voting power. It's just that there's so much mass fraud in the Russian election system that it's just a reality of knowing that Putin has stabilized Russia more than it's been stabilized in the past 40 years.
Sure.
And so that stability is worth everything to them. And so I I
Yeah.
don't think he's losing the popular election by any stretch, but I certainly don't think it looks like the numbers that end up coming out.
Right. No, I get it. And I want to say I like having a representative that takes my voice to government and speaks for me. Like,
Hmm.
and I like that the House of Representatives is a collection of people that represent us and have our voice. I just wish that person would talk to his constituents more. I wish he was walking around his district or her district or their district all the time and collecting responses and getting information. Because if you have a conservative district, I want you to go to Washington and I want you to represent those conservatives, you know what I mean? But if you have a liberal district and you're trying to be a moderate and bring conservatism to it, like maybe Joe Manchin is,
Right.
that you should be talking to your district because the people in West Virginia, not to segue too far, on everything polled, love the ideas that are being brought, the infrastructure, the voting rights issues. They love them. And Joe Manchin is playing partisan politics to try and get support from a group that isn't allowed to support him. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
so I just want representatives to represent the people. I think that's where the disconnect is. They started representing the money that was given to them and not the people that voted for them.
They started representing the money that was given to them, and they started representing themselves for the sound bites that they could collect.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem right now. Like, our our decision making ability as people right now is based on whether or not we get enough information in a headline,
Right.
which is absolutely wild. Like, you think about it, name it, a headline right now. The headlines just keep getting more and more simplistic, to put
Yeah.
it as best as I can, in order to win the average understanding of the average person.
Yep. I know I title every episode and I know the interesting titles, they get more
Mhm.
listens than the uninteresting ones. So,
Absolutely. And so that's the difficult part of it, is like, for somebody like me who has a high level understanding of a lot of different subjects, it's just like,
yeah.
I need information. I need more than just a title in order for me to be able to decide anything. Which
Yeah.
is why, like, when like, even in the scientific papers realm, like, I see a great sensationalist title, and the moment I start digging into the data, I'm like, this is horseshit.
Or it's nothing, right? I just
It's
saw
absolutely garbage.
Matt Gates's college whatever associates want him to step down. And I was like, okay, but there was nothing to it. He was a college guy in college, and now they're saying he's still the same guy and he should step down. And I want to say to everybody, yes, hi, Matt Gates. I'm in your district now. Yeah, as soon as I get my license changed, I'm going to run for commissioner or representative. Why not, right? Why not?
Hey, that's one of the things we've talked about. Get involved at
Hmm.
your local level.
That's right. So I love that. I wanted to come to this district specifically because I supported this lady, Dr. Jennifer Zimmerman, against him in 2018, and Trump came in the night before the election, and that kind of shifted things. And she's always been my hero. And I got here and I was like, I want Dr. Jennifer Zimmerman as my doctor. And they were like, she just does pediatrics. And I was like, damn.
It's like, hi, I am child. I am child.
I was like,
No.
she's my hero because she's just this Filipino lady that had so much passion and just so much empathy and just, that's what we
Hmm.
need. people that are willing to talk to the people in their district, you know? I
Oh,
mean, go if you're
absolutely.
a representative, you have to go to homeless tent, like these homeless tent cities, and figure it out because that's the most vulnerable people. So anything you do to help them will help your whole community, you know?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest problems with the way that the legislative system works out right now is that people get stuck in Washington for a long period of time and they
Yeah.
make a couple of trips home, and
And
that's
they
just it.
yeah, they're on the road to get donations, not to learn about people, you know?
Exactly. So unless you actually start sitting down and really working with people,
Hmm.
talking with people, figuring out what their situation is, figuring out where you're gonna, like, I don't expect Matt Gates or anybody, any particular rep, to sit down and say, okay, we're gonna get down and dirty in this, and we're going to study homelessness. Are you kidding? If Matt Gates came to me saying, "Hey, I went and talked to a couple of homeless people and I think I know the solution," I'm going to laugh him out of the building. Just like I would laugh any Democrat out of the building who said the same shit. It's like
Sure.
you actually have to spend some time
Walking the
and look at
walk.
and understanding the people who are in the situation. And
Hmm.
that's not something that you can reasonably expect a politician to do.
That's something I can reasonably expect.
I don't think so because think about it. If somebody's only got a week to figure out homelessness because that's all the time that they get at home, do you really think that that person is going to figure out a solution that actually works?
Well, again, HR1, S1 will change all that. It takes dark money out of politics, and you're not going to have to run just to get, you're not going to have to constantly run. We need to bring our representatives back, not our senators, but our House of Representatives representatives.
Mm,
They represent us, and they need to be more in tune with their district. It just has to be.
I don't disagree with you on that at all. Like people need, like they need to be in tune with their district, reps need to be able to sit down and say, hey, I need, or a group of them need to get together and say, hey, we need to study homelessness in our districts.
Yeah,
We need to actually start compiling some information here in order to figure this out. Just like any other problem.
yeah,
I don't want politicians coming up with solutions for me because their solutions are tainted by money. They are tainted by
yeah.
whoever is going to
That's right.
proffer the solution is the problem.
Right.
Because great, what if this, the solution is let's just play this game because fuck it, I love playing this game. So let's say that the solution is, affordable housing, right?
Boom.
Sounds great,
I
doesn't it?
love it. Yeah.
Tell me, what does affordable look like? What is actually affordable housing look like? Who is it affordable to? Is it affordable to the people? Is it affordable to the government? Okay, well, the next question, who is going to be supplying the funds to these people, to these
Hmm.
companies? Are these companies actually going to be submitting information that is going to be accurate enough to where you're not going to see financial waste?
No, you're always going to see financial waste. Aw, that was adorable.
So I don't disagree that affordable housing needs to be a focus. And affordable housing that allows people to have services centrally to them.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Childcare, grocery, health. Like you have these opportunities to be able to house people centrally, to provide the things that they need centrally. So
Yep.
that way you're not having to go 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes somewhere just to get your needs met.
Right. I mean, that's the major concern for anybody that's living on the streets is where are you going to sleep? And
Hmm.
that takes up a majority of your time. And next is what are you going to eat? And the next is how are you going to take care of your medical responsibilities to yourself? And one of
Hmm.
those is always failing. Either you don't have a place to live because you got food, or you're in pain because you didn't go to the doctor because you needed your money for somewhere to be.
Yeah. So through all of that, through all of those issues, you still have this level of government involvement that is going to have some really shitty dark money with it. And the
Hmm.
problem that you have, and this is where I've spent a little bit of time thinking about this. This is where democracy fails because on one side I could see people saying, yes, affordable housing now, let's build it, let's go, let's do this. On the other side, I could sit down and hear someone say, you know what, let's let somebody else figure out how to build affordable housing.
Mhm.
But in the end, the question is who is it actually affordable to, and how in the end does it manage to stay up to date and paid for?
Yeah, who gets the contract, like a private prison system, for updating and maintaining that system? Like
And
the governor, the guy running for governor in California suggested that he's going to turn malls into multifamily dwellings like that, which was an idea we've had way back in our
mhm,
discussions about homelessness, is turning malls into that. And I think,
taking empty buildings and
yeah,
actually turning them into places
right.
where you have centralized living and centralized facilities for
Yes.
any of your needs.
A
To
post
me,
office
that's
that contains a bank account and a post office box, a general pharmacy, a grocery store with like vegetables. Like you could house that all in
right.
one building.
A like a credit union, so that way it's like
Yeah.
any number of solutions are possible.
Hmm.
That question of who's going to pay for it, like there's so much existing infrastructure that could be used. It just needs to be updated for that use.
Yeah. And it's the policies and agendas in maintaining that stuff, the rules that the person maintaining it makes on the people that need it. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the issues are. That you can be kicked out but for some random reason that they just updated their policy about, like you
Right.
can't, and that's the issue, is that when you have a large supply of people needing something, you weed them out with your policies. It's not all inclusive. And so
Hmm.
you're never going to have millions of instant homes for you need 550,000 homes right now. You need
Hmm.
to house 550,000 people because that's how many people are homeless in America on a daily basis. You're never going to have that all at once. So there's always going to be a need for it, which means a demand, and so the supply, and so you raise the restrictions on it, and that's the issue
Hmm.
with it. And we need so much housing so fast that we can't get it.
And that's just it, is that I can already hear the arguments on the right. Well, if we're going to be supplying housing, look, nobody said that the housing that's going to be supplied is going to be anything that you actually want to stay in. I'm not
Right.
saying design it like a prison.
Right.
I'm saying that it's not going to be the most desirable situation, but compared to sleeping under a fucking bridge, it's probably a lot better. And
Exactly.
and on top of that, having these systems in place, that's like, for example, the whole issue of having prisons versus having private prisons. I shouldn't have to have private or for profit prisons. I shouldn't have to have a demand for that.
That's right.
However, if I have a prison that has empty beds with it, I should be okay with that. And the same should go in terms of this housing idea. Is that by having this housing, I shouldn't be creating a demand for it. Like,
Right.
I shouldn't be trying to figure out how to make people homeless so that way they live in these situations. But
Exactly.
if I have these beds available, that's a better situation. It means we're fixing problems.
Agreed.
So to me, it's one of those things where there is a way to do it, whether it's locally, whether it's at the state level, whether it's at the federal level even. Like, this is one of those things where if you want to get people off of the system, you have to first give them a place to get themselves on their feet.
Yep.
Period, end of
Agreed.
story.
Agreed.
And if you're going to be paying for people that are going to be on the system, then it is incumbent upon you to figure out how to best figure out what is going to be the cheapest solution.
Yes. I like the step stages of you're getting all this help. We're going to talk to you, give you everything you need, but we're going to let you know a year from now, this is going to be the change. And this is going to be the change. And I want it in advance because it seems like every time there's a policy change, somebody on welfare is like, "Oh, guess what? Now you're not
You're
qualifying
just
for food
getting
stamps."
dumped straight the
Yeah,
fuck
you're
off.
right. Instead of a warning system, like a year from
Hmm.
now, you're going to get 50% less. Oh,
or
but
or
we're going to
actually
help train you. We're going to give you free training to upgrade your life as well. You know what I mean?
sit down and figure out, because individuals are so varied. It's like,
Hmm.
hey, here is the a la carte. Right now you get all of these things.
Yes.
Now that you've gotten yourself stabilized, one of these things is going to get removed. Which one is it
Hmm.
that you don't need? Which one are you capable of getting on your own?
Exactly.
By allowing people to sit down and figure out what they are getting
Hmm.
and what they're able to do on their own and remove themselves, it's going to allow you to minimize the amount of waste in the system.
Totally. Totally. And if they end up keeping the health insurance, then that's fine. But eventually we have to give them a step up and a step off without being like brutal about it and saying this is a random deadline that you didn't. Jeffrey, I was trying to look at the poverty line
Hmm.
because minimum wage seems to fall beyond below the poverty line, and there's this thing going on. I couldn't my head couldn't even do it, Jeffrey.
Hmm.
There's so many percentages and there's so many, the verbiage is just, it's incomplete in what I was reading. I put it on Facebook, you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I was looking at that earlier.
I couldn't make sense of it. I honestly I couldn't make sense of it at all.
Let's see. Um, yeah, I was looking at what you had, and it was kind of all over the place. So
That was just
let's.
copy paste. That wasn't me picking and choosing which lines of it to. That was just the bottom because it related to me and what I could earn and what I could have in savings. And it was like, what? What? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
like looking at the federal poverty line, it's pretty interesting to say the least on what that measure looks like.
And that's
So
a
like,
yearly change, though. That's the thing. Yearly, that changes.
and I would expect that as inflation goes,
Hmm.
I would expect that to change. If it didn't change, that's how you're going to end up with, you know, more people falling below the poverty line every year.
Right. But how do you calculate it when it's sometimes 130% of, like, what's 130% of zero?
So basically, the way that it works, if you've ever looked up the Health and Human Services poverty guideline, so
Hmm.
for one person, what they consider poverty is if you make $12,880 and below.
Right.
Two people, 17,420. Three
Like
people,
plus
21.
$20.
Nope, this is just the federal poverty
Ah,
line.
okay.
So that's this is just like, if you make this amount or lower, you're considered in poverty.
Like 26,000 for a family of four,
20
right?
26,500 for a family of four.
Okay.
So that's where this gets interesting, is so that now they have all of these different calculations as to what is this level, what is that level,
Hmm.
why. I'm not sure why they have all of these levels designed the way that they do, but or whether or not they're even accurate. That's the other part. The
Right.
question is, what does true poverty look like? Does true poverty look like I can't afford a house? Okay,
Right.
well, what is the average rent for one person? Is it in a single bedroom house? Is it in a like multi-unit dwelling? Is it in, you know,
Mm.
a
And
fucking room that
where?
you're renting? Yeah, exactly.
Hawaii or Montana?
Right. Because, for example, like, I mean, if you look at what I was paying just for a single bedroom apartment when I was paying 625. This was 10 years ago.
Hmm.
Multiply that times 12, $7,500 a year that I'm paying on rent. So at 12,880 minus 7,500, that leaves me $5,380 to take care of other things that I might need.
Right.
So food. Let's say that food you're looking at, what, $400 a month? Yeah, that's pretty generous if I'm a
That's
single.
really good. That's about what I spend. Yeah.
So $400 a month. So you're looking at 4,800. Let's see here. Yeah, 400 times 12, 4,800.
Yep.
So now subtract out 4,800 for food. That leaves you with $580 for any other expense you might have.
Prescriptions.
Yeah, my prescriptions. So let's say that you're me, you're moderately healthy, and you're only on two
Mm-hmm.
prescriptions a year. My prescriptions cost me $240 a year. 340 left.
Boom. Boom.
Now, what else could you possibly need?
Uh,
Well,
Toilet paper, like
well, we figure that in
gas,
groceries.
insurance, and
Yeah, this is you don't own a car, you don't have to buy gas. You
okay,
don't have to buy if you have to buy a bus pass, you're pretty much fucked.
right.
And that's the thing is like
You
you know,
still need renter's insurance, right?
still need renter's insurance.
Mm,
Luckily my renter's insurance was like $150 a year.
yeah,
So now you're down to $190 left over.
and that's for a year. So
Mhm.
divide that by 52,
Oof.
right?
two
And
bucks a month, $2 a
that's
week.
$2 a week you get to spend on yourself.
$3 a week.
And hope you don't need like a toothbrush or or
Or that you don't
anything
end up in the
else.
emergency room.
Right. Or you need a couch or something breaks or
Right.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, literally, what that means is that you have like it assumes you have no expenses whatsoever.
Right. Right. And $12,000 in West Virginia, you might be living like a king. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But $1,200 in Florida, you're homeless. So,
$1,200 in Western Washington, you're homeless.
right. Exactly.
Quite literally. I mean, that's so even if even like for example, so that King in Snohomish County, I think it was 2016, said that if you were making below $72,000 as a family of four, you were considered in poverty
Mm,
in King County, Seattle.
wow.
That's a far cry above the 26 500
Yep.
that they put at the federal level, and
Yep.
literally three times.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. That's
It, it
crazy.
it is. And then you throw the percentages in of the 200% above, and then the 130% above, 100% above. And it's just, you don't know what category you fall. Like I actually, there's a name in that I'm gonna send an email to. She said if you have any questions or concerns, contact this person. And I started, drafting the email because I was like, this just I'm pretty intelligent and I'm not grasping this because you're using words you haven't defined in real legitimate areas. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's like I can't remember what the word is. It's all the way at the bottom and it's like disregard or something, disregarded, and you're like, what? It's just not in
Mm,
English. It's not in English. And I think it's meant to be vague so that and that's when you say I hate big government, this is what I'm referring to. I'll put
hmm
the link in the description portion. It's this language that somebody got paid $120,000 a year to generate.
hmm Yep.
It's Dan
So
saying that we need to speak down to the eighth grade level, right?
not
You were saying that
you,
you need to
you have
keep
to
it
speak at
simple.
the you have to speak at, not down. Let's just
At, right,
you have to
at.
speak at you know at the average understanding level of the American
Yes.
public. There's no possible way to be able to speak to everybody when you read things at like mine and Dan's levels. It's just not possible.
Exactly. No, I
Like
get it.
my and that's just it. The average reading comprehension of an American is at an eighth grade level.
Hmm.
Okay. You know, I have, the funny thing about it is that, there seems to be a lot of problems with that because number one, the media does a great job of sensationalizing things because of that.
Hmm.
But number two, the media is sensationalizing it because it sells ads.
Yeah.
But even then, ask yourself the question, what kind of reading comprehension level does the average person need?
Well, I think if you keep it at an eighth grade level, then you're gonna reach the people that that are of your level as well. I mean, you're still going to understand it, but at some point it needs to be dumbed down for me. You know what I mean?
Well, and here's the thing is that, I don't expect everybody to have, a master's degree comprehension of statistical analysis. I just don't.
Right. I hope not. That's why we
Or
have
an undergrad level, or even an undergrad level.
Mhm.
High school, the question of whether or not I should expect a high school average level is a great question, but when you look at what people do for a living, if your job does not involve reading stuff every day other than some technical specs,
Right.
you know, is that really such a bad thing? I would say there are problems because there are so many nuances that get missed because, you have to write it at an eighth grade level.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to expect the average person to be constantly reading stuff it isn't reasonable, as much as I hate to say that. I personally always suggest people read. Like, just
Learn. Just
read
learn.
stuff.
Yeah.
Find things that interest you. It doesn't have to be your career, or if it is your career, great. Learn how to
Hmm.
read everything about what you do. It'll help
Right.
you in the long run, really. I happen to read a lot of different stuff. Like, I'm constantly reading scientific articles.
Yeah.
Just because, number one, there's a lot of information coming out these days. Number
Yeah.
two, there's a lot of crap coming out these days.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people don't understand is that there is a scientific publication pipeline that's just for the sake of getting something out, and whether or not it is actually based in actual sound science practices is a whole nother discussion.
Yes, but let's get to that discussion. Here's some science. Can we drag that pipeline and plug it into Public Access America so we can just get that science stuff coming in and start understanding it? You know what I mean?
I mean, it would be nice, but then,
Hmm.
you still have to wade through what's bullshit.
Of course, but at least you're basing it on some fact. Like, is this scientific theory reasonable instead of, I don't even know. I don't even know what people are talking about these days. I
Hmm.
lost my internet. I mean, I lost my cable, so I'm just on HBO Max. I have no idea what's going on. But you did say something. I saw on Twitter, and this guy that keeps popping up in my feed said, Trump supporters are a bunch of dickwads or something. And I told him, I was like, you have to understand why they got where they were and what's keeping them there and why they're falling for this and what we can do to create and begin to bring them back. You can't just sit there and craft insults for attention, which is what you said, and it made me think of that. We
Oh
need to
yeah.
realize that, there's a reason why they believe in the authoritarianism of it all. It cuts out the red tape and it cuts out a lot of the bureaucracy in government that they see as wasteful.
Hmm. And that's just it. It's like, I get it. Like, I get, like, the despite, like, I hate sending money that's just going to get wasted on things. I
Right.
really do. It's like, for example, I think what they figured out is that, in the first stimulus package, there was approximately $40 billion when that was wasted.
Wow.
Like, ouch, man. Like, that
Yeah.
was what they were looking at spending on hospitals to try and boost their ability to handle the pandemic. That is a lot of
Yes.
damn money that got wasted in bureaucracy and bullshit and
And
lost.
And Democrats and Republicans and independents all have an issue with that very fact. The fact that there is so much waste and we want it gone. And Trump supporters and Bernie Sanders supporters and John Kasich supporters all believe that. And the
Hmm.
goal is for politicians to divert you from that fact and say, no, it's about immigrants. No, it's about religion. No, it's about abortion, but it isn't. It's about the waste of spending in government. And that's why we're disillusioned with the process, you know?
Exactly. The idea that you can spend that much money and have that much waste is
Mhm.
absolutely incredible. Think about it. $40 billion out of $1 trillion. You know what
That's a
that works out?
percent.
That's 4%.
That's a huge percent.
Ouch.
And so Republicans say don't spend as much because we don't want to waste as much. And Democrats say we need to spend more so that it reaches more people because there'll be more waste. Cut out the waste. Like,
figure out the yeah. And that's the problem is that these two sides aren't talking to each other right now because
right.
there's more to be gained in sound bites than there is, which is why like
Yes.
everybody that has been putting out sound bites on the whole Joe Biden and Caputo, you know, thing. I'm like, shut the fuck up. This is actually how it's supposed to work. Is that you're supposed to
Exactly.
have these two sides talking and having hard negotiations. And the fact of the matter is okay, Caputo and Biden didn't get anywhere. You had a bipartisan group of 10 senators,
Mhm.
five Republicans, five Democrats, actually come together and figure out an infrastructure bill.
Right.
Does that mean that it's done? No. Does that mean that the left or the right are going to support it? No. But does that mean you should really listen about what they agree on in that section? Absolutely.
Absolutely. And you should get all the input you can before you draft a policy that's going to affect 330 million people.
But it's so much more fun to get a soundbite of owning the libs
Of course,
or
because they're going to get your donations.
owning the MAGA, and it's all fucking showmanship bullshit.
It's politics. Like government legislating isn't politics. Getting elected is politics, and we're missing that. We're seeing all of these political statements, like you're saying, for donations as legislation, and that's not it at all. A
Can we just let's just
politician,
call it what it is? It's owning the Americans. You're so busy
yeah,
fighting with each other that you're
right,
not actually getting things done to help out, you know, the Americans that need it. So in
right.
the end, what you end up doing is you just fuck over your fellow countrymen.
Well, yeah, because oh, I'm for women's rights and you're not a woman. I'm for black rights, but you're not black. Oh, I'm for immigrant rights, but you're not an immigrant. You can't be part of our cause. But we don't coalition build anymore. And that's a
No,
real issue with America is that I can't coalition build with other people. And so I can only fight for my own rights. And that's really sad. BLM stopping violent police helps everybody. It disproportionately helps black and brown people, but it also helps me and keeps me safe. So it helps all of us, but I'm not allowed to be a part of that movement
right.
without delegitimizing it in some way, which is really weird to me.
You know, and you think about it, like even in some of the more libertarian circles, we have a bunch of jokes about police violence. Like, you know, cops are like a box of chocolates. They'll kill your dog. You know, and that's because it's an actual fucking stereotype. You
Yeah.
got some poor dog barking there because hey, there's some random person in my household in my space, and I need to keep my owner protected. And cop goes yeet to your fucking dog.
Yeah.
You know, that's yeah. You know, it shouldn't be an issue that is partisan. That there is significant use of
Right.
force on cops that is problematic. This
Yeah.
shouldn't be this shouldn't be a thin blue line or you know
Exactly.
a cab or whatever you want to yell. Like
Oh, I hate that.
I'm sorry, but that's not a personality type, and that's not a solution.
Right. We just have to realize that if a portion of Americans are dealing with something, we need to resolve that because that will benefit all Americans. Homeless people, they take their toll on our infrastructure. They cost money when they could be earning money. We need to fix it to better all of society, not just to help the homeless people. You know what I mean?
Get it down to a neutral cost, at a minimum,
Exactly. Yeah, for
because
everything.
exactly, yeah, you're going to have to spend some money, but if they can, in the end, make something for themselves too that,
Mm,
offsets that,
yeah.
then hey, fantastic.
We
You
had
just,
the transgender bathroom ban, but guess what was created? Gender neutral bathrooms. That helps me as a blind person. That helps me because now I'm not trying to stare at the woman's skirt on the sign trying to figure it out. And you know how many times that door is open when my face is like 1 inch away from it?
right, exactly. And of course, you end up scaring the shit out of some poor lady who's just not expecting.
Exactly.
It's like, no, 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 I'm not a creeper. I'm just blind.
Right. So give me a gender neutral bathroom that fits one person at a time. I'm great with that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
seriously, it's like, okay, great. Increased privacy for people who want to use a bathroom.
Hmm.
Like, or you know what? Have a fucking bathroom bar. It's like urinals on one side, shitters on the other.
Yeah.
And then y'all walk out and wash your hands. Just
Yeah.
I don't care. Just fucking wash your hands.
We're constantly trying to yes, please wash your hands.
Like
We're
like
constantly trying to design these rules and policies for the dumbest people on the planet. You know what I mean?
and and surprisingly, they're also the most vocal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's one of those things like who oh, let's just agree that if I have to go to the bathroom at Target, it's not because I'm like, yes, bathroom time at Target. It's because it's
R-
like, ah, fuck, I don't have a choice and I have to walk in there.
Right.
It
Exactly.
was like, I had to, Debbie and I had gone somewhere. Oh fuck, I forget what we decided. We had gone somewhere, and on our way back, we had stopped at a rest stop,
Hmm.
or not a rest stop, but a quick stop in order to go to. I needed to go to the bathroom because I wasn't going to make it,
Yeah, yeah.
and
That's my life. That's my life.
and so I was like, "Fuck, all right." So I stop in there, and I'm like, "I need the keys to the bathroom." They're like, "Oh, well, the men's is taken, so here, use the women's." It's, I mean, single toilet, so it's
Right.
like, okay, whatever. And of course, everybody's like, "Oh, you got the women's bathroom, should be." So it should be great. I mean, it was a fucking shark explosion in that bathroom, and I'm like,
Oh,
nobody is going into these bathrooms because they're like, this is the best day of my life. Yeah,
right.
because when I'm looking at, somebody making cave paintings out of their fucking shit on the wall, I'm totally into this.
Yeah, yeah. It gets your rocks off, right?
Fuck. And that's just it. Is like there and it's not, and that's the other issue is like, once again, you think that the symptom is the problem, but the problem is not the problem. That's not the problem.
Right.
you know you're like, oh well, you've got people who are going to be preying on innocent women and children, so your problem is with fucking creepers and pedophiles.
Right.
No- and you can't differentiate the difference between somebody who's trans and somebody who's a creeper. They've done the same thing with gay people.
Right.
If gay people are, you got to keep your kids away from gay people. What, so they don't
Hmm.
catch gay?
Right.
No, 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 because of what they do to kids. That homosexuality and pedophilia are two different things, right?
Right.
But that's not something that gets talked about in those circles. Having grown up in them circles, I
Is that
know
is
this.
that a fear that once a child, a male, sees a penis, they will instinctively want it, and we're trying to prevent that?
I
Like,
don't know. I saw my
oh
priest's
no,
penis, and that didn't seem to do anything for me.
no, no.
No.
Okay, I saw my priest penis and didn't do anything. I never had a priest. I'm sorry, I can't go down that route.
I grew up Catholic, and I never saw my priest's penis either. But
50 years old, Jeffrey. I've never seen a man's penis live. Never, never seen
all
a
right,
live.
well, guess what?
All right.
Woo!
I've seen it in video, which
No,
is, but
no. So the funniest thing is like the whole like. Okay, this is a great topic. Debbie's not here, so I'm only going to get in trouble later. No,
yeah, that's cool.
let's talk about dick pics for a second and why it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. Thank you for coming to my TED talk. No, so the funny thing is when Debbie and I were
I think it's a
uh
great idea. So let's do this.
so when I was dating Debbie, like I'm the kind of person I have, like, the first time I ever got asked for a dick pic, I sent a
Hmm.
picture of Richard Nixon pointing at somebody.
That's funny.
That's just not who I am. Mainly
Right.
because it's the information age. Like, I need somebody like sending a picture in later on with my smiling face, me holding my dick. It's
No,
like
I get it.
it's just one of those things that's like, hey, if you got, it's this is nothing about sex work. Sex work is actually work,
Hmm.
and I think it should be legalized. It's
Yeah, yeah. We're just talking about the guy that sends a dick pic to see if she's
right,
in.
right. And here's the thing is like, I'm not the kind of person who just like is like, hey, you want to know what would probably turn them on? Here's my dick.
Mm,
I think it's one of those things that's like, if someone wants a dick pic, you either need to be asked for a dick pic, or you need to ask to send a dick pic. Consent, people.
you need to
Consent
come
is
over and
important.
take a picture of my dick. I'm not going to send it to you.
Uh,
But that's me.
brings a whole new meaning to the phrase "take a picture, it will last longer."
Right. But
Oh.
here here's here's my theory on it is that a man's insecurity is his sexuality.
Hmm.
And so I believe a man sends a dick pic because that's his biggest insecurity. He's
Mm,
fine with a woman dismissing him for other things, but he wants her to dismiss his penis or not. Like
hmm.
that's what he's worried about the woman judging him on. And so that's the first thing that he shows. You know what I mean? Just like a
Right.
woman says on her profile, I'm an opinionated bitch. And that instantly tells me, hey, that's what most men are turned off by. So that's what I am instantly. And you're right.
Hmm. And that's great. The more information the better. To me,
Mhm.
I refuse to send out that kind of stuff simply because it's like the
Me too.
information age. It's one of those things where it's like, great. If a dick pic gets your rocks off,
Hmm.
fantastic.
Right.
But I'm not going to be the person proffering said dick pic. You're going to have
Right.
to ask, and you're going to have to really fucking hound me, because it's one of those things. Like, it's for me, it's just that information, knowing the internet the way that I do, is always going to be out there whether you want it or not. and
Hmm.
and that's one of those things that now people are finding this out in ways that they never really thought about when they were kids. Like,
Yeah.
you've got elementary school teachers getting fired because they filmed a porno once.
Yeah.
you know you've got you've got kids who are stumbling upon their parents' sex tapes, or finding out mom or dad did some things that they didn't
Yeah.
really think
Mom,
was
why are you
possible.
on OnlyFans? Right.
Exactly. And here's the thing is like, to me, whatever, consenting adults.
Hmm.
Debbie says you can't help who's going to beat it to you, and I think they're right about that.
They are
But at
right
the same
about
time,
that.
it's like, you know unfortunately, we live in a society where that seems to dehumanize people who do sex work.
Right.
And it's really unfortunate, because there really shouldn't be any shame about the human body doing the things that it does.
Exactly. I had a friend and I was like, you are so smart. Like you should get into politics because you are just that smart. And she was like, I'm an escort. Like there's no way that's going to happen. And I was so sad because I thought to myself, we need that kind of representation. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
that perception. That's why nothing is changing about sex work is because we're not allowing sex workers to have a say in our representation.
No. And that's, and there's a history behind that. And the reason is because sex workers made a lot of money, and it made a lot of men feel inferior.
Of course it did. Of course,
And guess,
women
and
are always making men feel inferior about everything because a woman can do anything a man can do, just not quite with the brute force, maybe, but definitely with angles and levers. You know what
I
I
don't
mean?
I don't know about that, because there's some great stories and videos out there of women lifting fucking engine blocks off of their kid.
That's true.
So
That's
so
true.
so I mean, there's a mother's strength that is just unparalleled out there.
And on average, 50% of women are stronger than I am, and 50% are weaker. You
Yeah,
know?
right. And to me, it's one of those things. It's like, and that goes into this weird whole segment of sports, and whether women can play men's sports,
Ooh,
and
you
whether
brought it
trans
up.
and
Yeah.
whether trans women can even play sports at all.
Because I had a friend that was really on board with that. And what he was saying was simply that, how do you regulate it? And it was it was a great question that I couldn't answer. Like I couldn't
Mm.
answer. What my theory was, if there's a boys league and a women's league, why isn't there a international, like a unisex league? Why
A co-ed league.
yeah, yeah, for everything. Like,
To me,
yes, we
that
should all be able to play. We should all be
oh,
able to
dude,
play each other. There is women that could kick Michael Jordan's ass. You know what I mean? Venus Williams will kick any man's ass. So let's just do it. Let's just do unisex sports. Get it over with.
right? And so, like, one of my favorites was when I was in high school and playing football, there was a girl on one of the other teams. And of course, everybody's like, "Oh, they're running out of players, so they need a girl." She fucking hit like a truck, dude.
Hell
And
yeah.
and mistake number one for me was like, she's not going to be able to knock me over.
Right.
And I mean, she fucking leveled my ass, and I was like, "Okay." All right,
Yeah.
let's play some football. And and
Right.
and for the rest of the game, like because I was a running back, it was like trying to figure out how I could either get past her or if I could. I mean, my nickname was Cannonball. I wasn't particularly fast, but I could go through anything.
Right.
And so like she hit like a fucking truck and it was awesome. Like to me it's like one of those things where we need to start having the conversation about what sports actually looks like. Like don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, like the whole issue behind playing sports right now is just it's such a fucking political mess anymore. It's not
Mm,
about actually playing sports.
no,
That's
it's
why
not for the
I was
love of
so
it.
excited like you started to see the rise of female kickers, you
Yeah.
know, and the chance that one of them's going to end up in the NFL. I'm like, great, get me a female kicker, get me a
Hmm.
female holder, get me a female center, get me a
Wide
female
receiver.
lineman, wide receiver, running
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
It's like
Coach.
I guarantee you that there's probably a few women out there that are going to outrun some of those fucking dudes.
That's what I'm
They're
saying.
fast.
How hard does Odell Beckham or Tyler Lockett hit compared to anybody? You know what I mean? There's Percy Harvin, right? The guys just that were kind of outrunners and not really,
Hmm.
I don't know.
You
I
know,
think
and
I think women can do anything we can do. It's just you can't put the best of the best against the best of the best. But like soccer is should be a unisex sport because it is. You're not hitting each other, right? And like
right.
you could start there. Basketball, I would love to see
I mean,
unisex
men and
basketball.
you look at men and women's soccer. Here's my question: is like you have rules like you can't just like straight up break away so fast you end up off sides.
Right,
Uh, it's women don't play with a different sized ball. They don't play on a different sized field.
right.
So if you're going to tell me that it's about stamina, I'm going to call bullshit. I've watched some of those games. They're fucking
Hmm.
fast.
Yep.
So the question is why isn't soccer like an international, co-ed? Why isn't there an international co-ed soccer, league?
I would
Are
love
you
that.
kidding? I would fucking dig that. A World Cup
Really.
of a World Cup that has, you have a set number of players and
Hmm.
your makeup has to be 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's great. You know, or you have to have, so many different people on your team. Like you can't have all men, you can't have all women, you can't, or whatever. I mean, that's
Yeah.
unfortunately there's people that are going to be more in tune with it than I am.
Just let it mix and see how it goes,
Make
Just
it
don't.
make it as inclusive as you can for the
Yeah.
sport. I think it'd be fantastic because
Yes.
I know some fantastic female soccer players that, let's face it, if you think if I think that I'm going to go up against them and manage to do anything, I'm a fucking idiot.
Right, right. I mean, like the Olympics, you need to build special skills. And like I'm gonna say like a female gymnast does different things than a male, like with the pole vault and all that, they have their special things. So I like that too. I like having that.
What, Jason? Are you saying that you can't imagine yourself, doing the splits and landing balls first on the mat?
Ooh, right, exactly. I'm not going to be doing that dance routine. And so there is specific skill sets that I like to see the individual sexes do. I like the male gymnast as well as the female gymnast. I like this. I was a
Or
gymnast.
like,
I was in gymnastics, so I love it,
or like diving, for example.
Okay.
Why is diving men's and women's?
Yeah, why is it? Why
You're
is it?
diving from the same board,
Why is
same height,
swimming?
same
Like,
pool depth.
yeah. Are you judging the splash different because you think that a woman is smaller? Like, I don't know. I've seen some small divers.
Right. Seen some small men, seen some small women.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like hard to like I can't imagine trying to like some of these sports. I can't
Yeah.
really have a great grasp of why they are split the way that they are.
We take every example to football and say, well, they're going to get hit. But every other sport, baseball, hockey, like,
My biggest problem with football right now isn't the fact that women are going to get hit by men. My biggest problem with football is that there are so many people coming out with traumatic brain injuries
Yeah.
That's a problem that you actually have to solve. And so I don't care
Yes.
if it's men or women or trans people. I don't care if they're non-binary, gender fluid. I don't care. Like, the brain injury part is real, and that's
Right.
across everybody, and that's a problem that has to get solved. You've got lifelong football players who are taking their own lives, killing their spouses, beating
Yeah.
their spouses, and they have so much brain damage from taking repeated hits. It's like that in and of itself is something that the system has to address.
Yep.
It's like, I don't recommend women play football the same reason I don't recommend men play football. It's like, if you want to have your brain intact,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the best sport to play right now.
That's
And
right.
it's for everybody. Like, that's my concern.
But what I think is sad is the fact that like Florida just passed a law saying transgender people can't be in sports from high school through college. And like you're definitely taking somebody's career opportunities away. And that's not fair at all. You know what I mean?
I
I don't I don't
Yeah.
like that.
Oh, it's awful. And second of all, who is the state to take away what the university decides?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that one.
DeSantis is big on that, telling businesses what they can and can't do in their business.
That's
Yeah.
that's 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 pretty fucking comical for a group that says that businesses should be able to decide what they can and can't do.
Right. As long as they're siding with them.
Exactly. And that's just such horseshit. It's like,
Yeah.
I personally don't think that these bans are healthy or helpful.
Right.
Um, when it comes to sports, I I think that they're more harmful than they are good. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I get from an equality perspective that, men have always gotten the pick of whatever they want to do, and then women had to fight to get the pick of what they wanted to do. Women of color had to get the pick of, had to
Yeah,
fight to get what they wanted to do. And the more exclusionary something is, the more problematic I see it as being. It's like,
totally.
it's why I like skateboarding.
I mean, you get
You
to
got men and
try
women who are
out.
skateboarding, and you got, to me, it's like,
Yes.
we've gotten to the point of segmenting and segregating people for whatever possible reason that we can, rather than
Mm-hmm.
figuring out what inclusion looks like.
Right. But skateboarding is a perfect analogy. It seems so like they'll help each other. I watch those videos all the time, and it's
Hmm.
women and it's men. There's a 2-year-old girl in a pink dress. There's a 400-pound guy on a skateboard. It doesn't really matter. People just love skating, you know?
And so, to me, like, I think one of the things that we definitely have to look at is, in terms of our sports, is that, are we finding sports that are inclusive, that are going to help foster that spirit of cooperation?
Yeah.
Skating is a great one to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, going to a metal show and being in the pit. Everybody in the pit is your brother.
That's right. You make sure you hit them, but you make sure they pick them back up too. Yeah,
And you're cheering on everybody.
that's right.
That's just it. Is that, we just don't stand for crowd killing dicks. That's all.
Right. But when it
You know.
comes to sports, there's a tryout, right? It's
Hmm.
simple. You pass the tryout or you get cut. And that
Hmm.
should be universal. Anybody should be able to try out for anything. Jeffrey, I should be able to go apply for your job. And
Hmm.
if obviously they're going to be like, you're not qualified, but I had my shot at it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and here's me, like, as I'm in the application process right now for a promotion,
Mm,
and I told this story on somebody's Facebook wall, and here's how it goes. When I was in high school playing basketball, I played 6 quarters of basketball a night. Our JV team only had 5 people. And so, if you know anything about basketball, that meant that I had no subs
right.
whatsoever. So for 4 8-minute quarters, I was playing nonstop. And then I would play 2 full quarters of varsity after that.
Nice.
So I was playing 6 quarters of basketball a night, and that legally, that was all I allowed. That was all I was allowed to play. Like, I wasn't allowed to play more. um, but one night I had a really fucking bad asthma attack on the floor. We
Mm,
couldn't catch a break to get down to our end of the floor
mm,
so I could get my inhaler. And so like I started fading, and I knew that it was happening. And finally, as the play broke away from me, I went down. I couldn't breathe, nothing. They stopped the game. Like I had to have some medical intervention in order to start getting my lungs working again.
Mm,
And I wasn't about to come off the floor, because if I came off the floor, I
game
couldn't
over.
come back in
Right.
because of the rules.
Yeah.
Now, there was nothing saying I had to come off the floor. So I stood there by my coach waiting for my lungs to come back to me, which meant that it was a 5-on-4 game.
Right.
That coach pulled one of his players and had him stand next to him
That's cool.
until I got my lungs back under me and I was ready to go.
That's cool.
So I shook the player's hand and I said, "All right, let's go." And then we both ran in and we went back to playing 5-on-5. And after we won the game, and there was something to be said. That coach had no reason to pull his player
Right.
back and wait for me to regain my lungs. He had every reason and right to take advantage of that,
Sure.
but he didn't. And something he said stuck with me is that you know I'd rather win a fair fight. And that's how I feel like when I apply for positions. If I don't get this promotion that I applied for, am I going to be bummed and upset? Yeah, but I would rather lose a fair fight than win a rigged competition.
I think America needs to know that. That's what America needs to know is that we need to win fair fights.
I would rather win a fair fight than win a rigged competition.
Oh,
I would rather lose a fair fight than
me
win a
too.
rigged competition.
Me too. Me too. That's awesome.
Because at least then, like I'm gonna come back stronger, and I'm gonna be pissed
Yeah,
I'm gonna do everything I can to improve myself.
right.
I will come back at it harder than ever before.
Yeah.
But if we don't get to this mindset of, I deserve it, it's mine, if we don't
Hmm.
get away from that, then have these expectations that the competition should be rigged for us, for me.
I deserve the first place trophy because I'm me, not because I did anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I don't care as long as I lose a fair competition, I am good with it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate losing, so I'm going to be pissed off that I lost. but
Sure.
but then that's incumbent upon me to actually do the work to get better and win the next one.
Yeah, or find something that you're going to be victorious at over time. But honestly, you need to fail at something to know that you want to do it. You know what I mean? If
Mhm.
you just instantly succeed, is it really worth anything then?
Mhm.
If you're instantly great at a video game and never lose and never die, was that a good video game? You know what I mean?
Right. If somebody else isn't handing your ass to you every once in a while, how
Yeah.
are you to judge whether or not you're any good?
Exactly. And I think life is like a staircase, and I think that's what video games was built on. The
Mhm.
levels. Like you can't expect to be great at level 5 until you complete level 4. And to do that, you got to go through level 1, 2, and 3. And I think they see the top of the staircase and they're like, there's the goal. I want to be there. And nothing that doesn't get them there instantly is worth it. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? We need to enjoy the work of getting there because that's what life is. You have so much time to do it.
Mhm. And if you're a competitive person, enjoy the competition of it.
Yeah. Yes. Because it's amazing to see somebody be so good at something, whether you're the loser or the winner. To see like a Tom Brady, I can't imagine what it would be like to be on the field with Tom Brady or to be his coach. Even if you're losing, just to see that talent, you know what I mean? It has to be
Right.
something.
Right. And that's just it, is that it's always amazing when you get to stand, and see someone who is just that fucking good. It
Right.
really is.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, is like, there were a lot of questions about Tom Brady and whether or not he was actually that good. He went to
Hmm.
Tampa Bay and then he won a Super Bowl. So,
Yep.
I mean, I was one of those people. I was like, yeah, Belichick has got everything rigged, and I think it's garbage. So
Right.
what does Tom? So Tom Brady shut everybody's mouth. He
That's
is
true.
that good.
He is that good. Russell Wilson is that good.
Mm,
There's a talent that I really love to watch, and I wouldn't. I'm glad somebody's winning it, but I want everything to be equal. I think we'll wrap it up
exactly.
there. Wait,
Exactly.
what's a good streaming app to use? I lost my
Which,
cable, so now I need something that encompasses as much as possible.
oh man. I personally just use like I use Netflix. Like
Okay.
there's a lot on there. That's not everything. I think it just depends on what you're trying to go for. I think if you're
Gotcha.
just looking for general purpose, it's Netflix. If you're looking for a specific purpose, like for me in anime, I mean there's Funimation, there's Crunchyroll.
Mm,
Those two are fantastic.
cool. I'll go with Crunchyroll then. Thank you.
Hmm.
Of course, HBO Max has a lot of anime, so I don't know if I need that, but I gotta find something. So if anybody has any suggestions about a good streaming app, I'm all ears.
Yeah, seriously. Like I really wish that you could get more live TV for
Yeah.
how much it costs though. Like YouTube TV was great like for World Cup. I bought a month subscription just so I could watch the World Cup.
Okay, somebody suggested YouTube TV to me.
But for me like I don't watch a whole lot of TV, so it's not worth it for me to keep it going for the cost
Right.
that it is.
Exactly. I like some news in my life, and you don't get live news on HBO Max or Netflix, you know?
Um Pluto TV is a free one.
Which
If you've
one?
ever Pluto TV.
Okay.
Um, because so they show my Montana State Bobcats football games. So
Nice.
so I end up watching that. Plus they've got MST3K on there and all this other fun stuff. They got like a lot of classics that are I would say that I would call them DRM free. And
Right,
then they
right.
got some news on there too. So
I like that. It was nice seeing you again, Jeffrey.
good to see you.
Give the family a hug. I'm glad everybody's vaccinated, and I will talk to you next Sunday.
See you next